The Oval Office, a symbol of American power and diplomacy, bore witness to a different kind of spectacle on February 28, 2025. On this day, the room that has seen countless historic decisions and negotiations became the stage for an unprecedented confrontation. What began as a routine meeting between US President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky devolved into a public display of animosity, shocking both the attendees and the world at large. The meeting, intended to strengthen ties and discuss ongoing issues, quickly spiraled out of control, laying bare the fractured state of US-Ukraine relations. The tension in the room was palpable as both leaders exchanged sharp words and accusations, each defending their nation's stance with fervor. The world watched in astonishment as the two leaders clashed, their heated exchange broadcasted live, capturing the attention of millions. The confrontation was not just a political spectacle, but a moment that highlighted the deep-seated issues between the two countries. Their heated exchange signaling a potential turning point in the geopolitical landscape. Analysts and commentators quickly weighed in, speculating on the possible repercussions of this very public fallout. President Trump, known for his unpredictable demeanor, appeared dismissive of Zelensky's concerns regarding Russia's ongoing aggression against Ukraine. His body language and tone suggested a lack of empathy, further straining the already tense atmosphere. Zelensky, visibly shaken, found himself on the receiving end of Trump's ire, struggling to maintain his composure as he defended his country's position. The Ukrainian leader's distress was evident, as he faced a barrage of criticism and accusations, accused of orchestrating propaganda campaigns and failing to appreciate the US's contributions to the conflict. The accusations were harsh and unexpected, leaving Zelensky and his delegation in a state of shock. The encounter left observers questioning the future of the US-Ukraine partnership, a relationship that had been carefully nurtured over the years. The fallout from this meeting was immediate, with analysts predicting a significant shift in diplomatic relations. A relationship once characterized by mutual respect and shared strategic interests, the events of that day cast a long shadow over the future, with many wondering if the damage could ever be repaired. The Oval Office confrontation was not an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a series of disagreements and misunderstandings that had been brewing for months. It was the culmination of months of escalating tensions, with both sides growing increasingly frustrated with the lack of progress and the perceived slights from the other, fueled by policy disagreements, personal animosity, and a growing sense of mistrust between the two nations. The personal dynamics between Trump and Zelensky only added fuel to the fire, making a resolution seem even more distant. The events of that day sent shockwaves through the international community, with allies and adversaries alike taking note of the discord. The implications of this fallout were far-reaching, affecting not just the US and Ukraine, but the broader geopolitical landscape, raising concerns about the US's commitment to its allies and the potential for further instability in Eastern Europe. The uncertainty surrounding US foreign policy added to the anxiety, with many questioning the future direction of American diplomacy. The ramifications of this diplomatic debacle continue to unfold, with each new development adding another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. The world watches closely, waiting to see how the US and Ukraine will navigate this crisis, casting a long shadow over the future of US-Ukraine relations. The path forward remains uncertain, with both nations facing significant challenges in rebuilding trust and cooperation. To understand the severity of the Oval Office confrontation, one must examine the events that led to this dramatic rupture. The roots of this conflict can be traced back to a series of contentious interactions and policy disagreements that had been simmering for months. The seeds of discord were sown months prior during the Munich Security Conference in early February 2025. This annual event, known for its high-stakes discussions on global security, became the stage for a significant diplomatic fallout. Vice President Vance, a controversial figure known for his hawkish stance and sharp rhetoric, delivered a scathing critique of European leaders. His speech was not just a critique, but a direct challenge to the European approach to global issues. Accusing them of stifling free speech and failing to adequately address the Ukraine crisis, Vance's words were a stark departure from the usual diplomatic tone. The audience's reaction was a mix of shock and dismay as journalists scrambled to capture the unfolding drama. Vance's comments, widely perceived as a deliberate provocation, further strained transatlantic relations. These relations were already frayed by previous disagreements over trade and defense spending, making the situation even more volatile. The tension was palpable as leaders debated at the conference table, with NATO headquarters symbolizing the strained alliance. The disagreements over trade policies and defense budgets had already set a precarious stage. His words signaled a shift in US foreign policy, away from multilateralism and towards a more unilateral approach. This shift was evident in the administration's actions and rhetoric, prioritizing American interests above all else. The emphasis on military strength and economic pressure became the cornerstone of this new approach. The US military parades and the marching soldiers were a clear demonstration of this newfound assertiveness. Prioritizing American interests above all else, this approach was perceived by many as isolationist and detrimental to global stability. The bustling business district in Washington, D.C. reflected the internal focus of the administration. This approach, perceived by many as isolationist and detrimental to global stability, sparked protests and rallies both domestically and internationally. The global community watched with growing concern. Placing the US at odds with its European allies, the administration's stance deepened the rift within the transatlantic partnership. Meetings at the European Union headquarters in Brussels became increasingly tense. Diplomatic efforts to bridge the gap were ongoing, but the deepening rift within the transatlantic partnership was evident. The symbolic handshake between leaders could not mask the underlying tensions. The Munich incident exposed a growing divergence in perspectives between the US and Europe on how to handle the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The front line of the Ukraine conflict became a focal point of this divergence. While European leaders advocated for continued dialogue and diplomacy, the US administration, under Vance's influence, appeared to favor a more confrontational approach. The roundtable discussions highlighted these differing strategies. Emphasizing military strength and economic pressure, the Trump administration's approach was clear. The movement of military tanks and soldiers patrolling borders underscored this strategy. The emphasis on military strength and economic pressure was evident in the administration's actions. Fighter jets flying in formation and protests against economic sanctions became common sights. This divergence in strategies, coupled with a lack of communication and trust, created a fertile ground for misunderstanding and mistrust. The empty conference rooms and heated discussions among diplomats were telling signs. The lack of communication and trust among leaders created a fertile ground for misunderstanding and mistrust. The tense meetings and disagreements among heads of state were clear indicators of the growing divide. Ultimately, this culminated in the explosive confrontation in the Oval Office. The view of the Oval Office exterior and the close-up of the White House windows at night symbolized the gravity of the situation. Vice President Vance emerged as a central figure in the escalating tensions between the US and Ukraine. His confrontational style and hardline stance on Russia, while appealing to some within the Trump administration, alienated many European leaders and fueled a climate of suspicion and mistrust. Vance's actions, often perceived as reckless and counterproductive, played a significant role in pushing the US-Ukraine relationship to the brink. During Zelensky's visit to Washington, Vance took on an even more prominent role, acting as the administration's point person and shaping the narrative surrounding the meeting. He publicly accused Zelensky of engaging in propaganda tours and downplayed Ukraine's concerns about Russian aggression. His accusations, delivered with characteristic bluntness, further inflamed tensions and poisoned the atmosphere ahead of the crucial meeting between the two presidents. Some analysts speculate that Vance's actions were part of a deliberate strategy to undermine Zelensky and sabotage any potential for reconciliation. Others believe that his aggressive approach stemmed from a genuine belief that confrontation was the only way to deal with Russia and its allies. Whatever his motivations, Vance's role in this unfolding crisis cannot be overstated. His actions have had a profound impact on US-Ukraine relations, leaving a legacy of distrust and animosity that will be difficult to overcome. The potential consequences of halting US military aid to Ukraine are dire, not only for Ukraine itself but also for the broader geopolitical landscape. The ramifications of such a decision would ripple far beyond the immediate conflict zone, affecting global alliances and the balance of power. Ukraine, already locked in a protracted conflict with Russia-backed separatists, relies heavily on US military assistance to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity. This aid includes not just weapons and equipment, but also training and intelligence support, which are crucial for maintaining an effective defense. Cutting off this vital lifeline would severely weaken Ukraine's ability to resist Russian aggression, potentially leading to further territorial losses and a humanitarian catastrophe. The loss of US support could demoralize Ukrainian forces and embolden Russian-backed separatists, escalating the conflict to new and more dangerous levels. The withdrawal of US support would send a chilling message to other vulnerable nations in Eastern Europe, particularly those bordering Russia. These countries, which have long relied on the US as a counterbalance to Russian influence, would find themselves in a precarious position, questioning their own security and future. It would signal that the US is no longer willing to act as a guarantor of security in the region, emboldening Russia to pursue its expansionist ambitions without fear of serious consequences. This could lead to increased military activity and provocations by Russia, not just in Ukraine, but across the entire region. This could potentially trigger a new era of instability and conflict in Europe, undermining decades of progress towards peace and cooperation. The delicate balance that has been maintained through diplomatic efforts and international agreements could unravel, leading to a resurgence of old hostilities and new conflicts. Moreover, halting military aid would be a betrayal of the Ukrainian people, who have demonstrated remarkable resilience and determination in the face of Russian aggression. Their struggle is not just for their own freedom, but for the principles of democracy and self-determination that are valued worldwide. They have fought bravely to defend their country and their right to self-determination, often at a great human cost. The sacrifices made by Ukrainian soldiers and civilians alike highlight the profound human impact of this conflict, which cannot be ignored. Abandoning them at this critical juncture would be a moral failure and a strategic blunder, with far-reaching consequences for the credibility and reliability of the United States on the world stage. It would undermine the trust of allies and embolden adversaries, reshaping the global order in ways that could be detrimental to international stability and peace.